What if the first words of the Bible are not telling the story of a beginning, but the story of a restoration? We all know the verse, "The earth was formless and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep." But what if that darkness was not an empty canvas, but the ruin of a world that came before, a world intentionally erased from our memory? Before Adam ever walked in Eden, before the 6 days of creation, there was another age. An age of light, ruled by celestial beings in a world so perfect. Its memory was deemed too dangerous to survive. This is not a fantasy. This is a truth whispered in texts that were sealed away, fragments found in the Book of Enoch and in ancient traditions that speak of worlds created and uncreated by God. What you are about to discover will change the way you read Genesis forever. It reveals that the Garden of Eden was not the first paradise, but a second chance. Adam was not the first creation, but the first great hope, after a catastrophic rebellion that plunged the universe into chaos. A war in heaven that had devastating consequences on earth. If you have ever felt there is more to the story of creation than what we have been told, you are in the right place. Join us as we uncover the lost age before Genesis. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because the secrets that were once sealed are now being revealed. The story we know begins with a command, "Let there be light." But have you ever stopped to ask why the world was dark and empty in the first place? The Hebrew words used in Genesis chapter 1 verse 2, tohu wa bohu, don't just mean formless. They carry a sense of chaos, of a ruin. Why would a perfect creator start with a ruin, unless it wasn't the start? It was the aftermath. This is where the accepted narrative has a stunning silence. A silence that is broken by a single, powerful question God asks Job. In Job chapter 38, God says, "Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth, while the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy?" Think about that. Before man, there were sons of God witnessing the creation. Who were they, and where did they go? The scriptures give us clues hidden in plain sight. In Isaiah chapter 14, we read of a brilliant being, a morning star, who sought to exalt his throne above the stars of God only to be cast down. Ancient traditions tell us this rebellion was not just a heavenly event. It was a cosmic war that scarred creation itself, plunging the first earth into the very darkness and chaos we find in Genesis. A world reduced to tohu wa bohu. What if the first chapter of Genesis is not the story of the absolute beginning, but the story of a divine restoration? What if the 6 days of creation were God's reclamation project over a fallen, broken world? The evidence suggests that the story of this first age was intentionally obscured, considered too profound, and perhaps too dangerous for a fledgling humanity to understand. A secret sealed away, waiting for a generation hungry for the whole truth. So where is the proof of this lost age? It is not found in the pages we read every Sunday. It is hidden in the texts that were left behind. Ancient Jewish tradition, in writings like the Midrash, speaks of a profound secret, that God created and uncreated multiple worlds before he was satisfied with ours. Think of that. Our world was not the first draft. It was the final, perfected version after other creations had failed. This wasn't just a philosophical idea. It was a guarded teaching, a truth whispered from master to student. These traditions explain that the chaos of Genesis chapter 1 verse 2 was not an empty beginning, but the remnant of a prior world judged and broken, a world plunged into darkness by a great celestial failure. What the Bible gives us in a single verse, these ancient texts expand into a dramatic, forgotten history. A history of the first dominion. But if this is true, why was it removed? Why is it not common knowledge? The sages of the Second Temple period made a difficult choice. They believed this knowledge was too perilous, too easily misunderstood by a people struggling to grasp the one true God. The story of fallen angels and a ruined first earth could lead to confusion, even heresy, and so they sealed it away. They chose a simpler narrative for the sake of faith. deliberately obscuring the full, staggering scope of God's work. What you are hearing now is the unsealing of that knowledge. The clues in Genesis are not mistakes. They are echoes of a story that was intentionally muted. A story that reveals Eden was not the beginning of paradise, but the restoration of it. And Adam was not the first being to walk the earth. He was the first to be given a second chance. So what was this world before Adam? Imagine an earth bathed not in the light of our sun, but in a primordial, divine radiance. A world of perfect order, where creation hummed in harmony with its creator. Ancient texts, like the sealed portions of the Book of Enoch, speak of this era as the first dominion. It was a kingdom given not to man, but to powerful celestial beings. The sons of God, who shouted for joy at the foundation of the world. They were the original stewards, the primordial watchers, tasked with nurturing a creation that was pristine and untouched by decay. But this age of light was not destined to last. A great rebellion erupted within the celestial hierarchy. Led by a being of immense power and brilliance, this was not a quiet descent. It was a cosmic war, a conflict so violent it did not remain in the heavens. It spilled over into the physical realm, scarring the very fabric of the first earth. The rebellion sought to usurp God's authority, and in its wake, order collapsed into chaos. The divine light that once sustained that world was withdrawn, plunging the planet into an abyss of darkness and watery ruin. This is the cataclysm that the first verses of Genesis describe. The formless and void earth was not an empty slate, it was a tomb. A world drowned and broken, buried beneath the face of the deep as a consequence of spiritual warfare. The history of the First Dominion, its magnificent rulers, and their catastrophic failure was intentionally erased, submerged in the chaos that we now call the beginning. God's Spirit moving over the waters was not preparing to create for the first time. It was preparing to salvage a world that had already been lost. And this changes everything. It means the story of good and evil did not begin in the Garden of Eden with a serpent and a piece of fruit. It began in a lost age, with a war that shattered the first creation. Adam was not Plan A. He was the answer to a primordial tragedy. Eden was not the first paradise, but a new sanctuary built upon the ruins of an old one. It was a second chance, a bold and gracious move by God in an ancient conflict that continues to this day. And understanding this forgotten war is the key to unlocking the deepest secrets of the Bible. This begs a critical question. If this story is so fundamental, why is it not the version we all know? Why does the traditional telling of Genesis begin with a blank slate, an empty void, instead of the ruins of a cosmic war? The answer is not a simple oversight. It was a deliberate choice made by wise and cautious men centuries ago. They looked upon a world struggling to understand the singular, all-powerful God of Abraham, and they feared that this deeper truth would be a stumbling block. Think of the early believers. They were surrounded by cultures that worshipped dozens of gods, spirits, and chaotic forces. The story of a pre-Adamic world, with its powerful celestial beings and a rebellion that scarred creation, sounded dangerously close to the myths they had just escaped. To protect the core message, that there is one Creator, sovereign and good, the sages and early church fathers chose to simplify the narrative. They sealed away the more complex traditions, focusing on the story of Adam as the clear, undisputed beginning of humanity's journey with God. This was not a conspiracy to deceive. It was an act of guardianship. In councils where the very books of the Bible were debated and canonized, certain texts were deemed too esoteric, too profound for a young and growing faith. Books like Enoch, which speak openly of these events, were set aside. The decision was made to present a history that was clear and foundational, removing anything that could lead to confusion or doubt. They hid this truth, not because it was false, but because they believed we were not ready to hear it. But what they sought to protect, they also obscured. In their effort to preserve the foundation of faith, they buried a revelation that explains so much: the origin of evil before man, the true depth of God's redemptive plan, and the reason Eden was a walled garden, a sanctuary in a world already touched by darkness. They believed they were protecting the flock. But now, for those who seek a deeper understanding, the time has come to unseal what was once hidden. So this is not just a history lesson. It is a revelation that reframes the entire purpose of your faith. Suddenly, God's plan is not a simple reaction to one man's disobedience in a garden. It is an ancient, cosmic restoration project. The story of salvation did not begin in Genesis chapter 3. It began in the silence before Genesis chapter 1, when God looked upon the ruins of a perfect world and chose not to abandon it, but to reclaim it. This makes the cross not just a solution for human sin, but a declaration of victory in a war that has raged since before time. And why is this truth coming to light now? Because many are no longer satisfied with a faith that stays in the shallow end. You who are watching this have likely felt it. You have read the scriptures and sensed that there were depths left unexplored, questions left unanswered. This knowledge was sealed for a reason, but it was not sealed forever. It was preserved for a generation with the spiritual maturity to understand that God is bigger than the simple stories we are often told. A generation ready to see the full, breathtaking scope of His eternal purpose. This forgotten narrative speaks directly to the spiritual battles we face today. Have you ever wondered why the world feels so broken? Why evil seems so deeply entrenched? The traditional explanation of Adam's fall, while true, feels incomplete. This deeper truth reveals that we were born into a world that was already a war zone. The darkness we fight against is ancient, a remnant of a primordial rebellion. Eden was a beachhead of light in a world long ago surrendered to shadow, and we are the inheritors of that sacred ground. Understanding this does not weaken your faith, it forges it into something stronger. It transforms the Bible from a collection of stories into a single, epic saga of cosmic reclamation. It reveals that your personal struggles are part of a much larger, much older conflict between light and darkness. You are not just fighting for your own soul. You are a soldier in God's grand army, continuing a battle that began in the lost age before Adam, and whose final victory is already assured. But this raises an even deeper question. If Eden was a sanctuary built upon the ruins of a fallen world, what exactly was it protecting? The answer is not a place, but a presence. Ancient traditions speak of a primordial light, a divine radiance that was the very essence of the first dominion. This was not the light of the sun or stars which were created later. This was the uncreated light of God Himself, and it sustained all life. When the rebellion occurred, that light was withdrawn from the world. The darkness on the face of the deep was more than an absence of light. It was an absence of God's sustaining glory. The command, "Let there be light," was not just the creation of physical light, but the first step in reintroducing a measure of divine order into a creation that had been lost to shadow. Eden, then, was a pocket of this restored reality, a garden where a remnant of that original, holy presence could dwell. It was a memory of what was lost. And this leads us to a truth that has been hidden in plain sight. If the original, life-giving light of God was removed from the world before Adam, where did it go? Is it possible that this divine light was not extinguished, but concealed? Hidden away by God, reserved for a time when creation would once again be ready to receive it. Could this be the key to understanding some of the Bible's greatest mysteries? Because this hidden light is not just a relic of a forgotten past. It is the thread that connects Genesis to Revelation. It is the light that the prophets sought, the glory that filled the tabernacle, and the ultimate promise of the world to come. What you are beginning to see is that the story of the Bible is not just about the redemption of man, but about the restoration of a lost light to a darkened world. and its secrets are only now beginning to surface. This changes the very image of God we hold in our hearts. He is not merely a creator who spoke a world into existence from nothing. He is a restorer, a divine architect who looked upon the wreckage of a failed creation and saw the potential for a new kingdom. The 6 days of Genesis are not just an act of creation, they are an act of profound, cosmic redemption. God did not abandon a world scarred by rebellion. He rolled up his sleeves and went to work. And where does humanity fit into this cosmic drama? We were not an afterthought. We were the answer. Adam, created in the very image of God, was the definitive response to a celestial rebellion that had failed. Where the highest angels sought to exalt themselves, man was created from the dust, destined for glory. We were God's plan to reclaim a dominion that had been lost, to bring light back into a world that had been surrendered to darkness. This hidden knowledge was never meant to shatter your faith, it was meant to complete it. It does not erase the story of Adam's fall, but instead explains the world into which he fell, a world already under the shadow of an ancient enemy. It reveals that the cross was not just a remedy for human sin, but the final, decisive blow in a war that began before time. This truth deepens your faith because it reveals a God whose plan is far grander and more ancient than we ever imagined. A God whose love is so fierce that he would enter a war-torn creation to reclaim it, piece by piece, soul by soul. The story you have always known is true, but it is only one chapter in an epic that spans eternity, and you are a part of its glorious conclusion. And this leads to the final, most profound revelation of all. The plan of redemption was not conceived in the shadow of a tree in Eden. It was established before the foundations of our world were ever restored. The Apostle Paul tells us we were chosen in Christ before the foundation of the world. The book of Revelation speaks of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world. This was never a backup plan. The sacrifice of Jesus Christ was God's definitive answer to that first, primordial rebellion, long before Adam was ever formed from the dust. Suddenly, the book of Genesis reads not as a beginning, but as a new chapter in an ancient war. The command to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth was not just a blessing, it was a battle cry. It was a divine mandate for humanity to retake a world that had been lost to darkness. The serpent in the garden was not a random tempter. He was the defeated usurper of the first age, making a desperate attempt to corrupt God's new creation and sabotage the entire restoration project. Adam's test was the first battle on a new front of a very old war. Everything points to Christ. He is the true morning star who never fell. He is the uncreated light that was withdrawn from the first earth, only to be made manifest in human flesh, to bring that light back into the world. His coming was not merely to save mankind from sin, but to reclaim all of creation from an ancient enemy. The cross was not just a historical event, it was a cosmic declaration of victory, a final judgment on the rebellion that began in the lost age before Genesis. He was not Plan B. He was, and is, the eternal answer. The Bible is no longer just a history of humanity. It is the epic saga of God's unwavering plan to restore a fallen cosmos. Your faith is not a footnote in a small story. It is a vital role in the final act of a conflict that has spanned eternity. The truth was not hidden to deceive you, but preserved for you. Preserved for a time when you would be ready to understand the true scale of God's glory, the depth of His love, and the final absolute victory that was secured for you before the world began. So take a moment and let this truth settle in your spirit. The story of your faith is not small. It is not confined to a single garden or a single moment of sin. It is an eternal epic, a story of cosmic restoration in which you play a vital part. For centuries, these truths were sealed, deemed too profound for the unready, but they were not lost. They were preserved for this very moment, for a generation hungry for the full counsel of God. These revelations, hidden by the guardians of old, are now coming to light. What was whispered in secret is now being proclaimed, because the time is right. You are part of a great awakening, a moment when the deeper things of God are being unveiled to those who have the ears to hear. This is not just knowledge. It is an invitation to see the magnificent, awe-inspiring scope of God's eternal plan for His creation. If this truth burns in your heart and awakens a new understanding, show your support by leaving a like, subscribing to the channel, and activating the notification bell so you do not miss what is coming next. And now, we have a members area. By becoming a member, you bless this work and help us continue producing edifying and revealing content like this, bringing these lost truths into the light. We are a community of seekers from all over the world, united by this desire for truth. Let us know where you are watching from by leaving a comment with your city or state below. It is a blessing to know how far this light is reaching. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of God's hidden mysteries.